Welcome to the Keep Ale Free, a reproductive justice story. I go by Castro, and my team and I are super excited to be presenting at Facing Race this year. A huge thank you to Race Forward and the Facing Race team for making this virtual experience possible so that this year's conference can be accessible and safe. So we're excited to join y'all today to talk about deportation defense work, how the immigrant rights movement's call to abolish ICE is a reproductive justice issue, and how this team uses digital and cultural organizing to shift power and create change. We're going to move into intros now, so feel free to pause this recording at any moment to take care of yourself and those around you. Grab some water and snacks. Wonderful. So we're going to do some intros now. So like I said, my name is Castro and my pronouns are she, hers. And I was born and raised on Lenape Manatee-Cock land, and I currently reside on the occupied land of the Odahan people, who, like many indigenous peoples, are currently fighting for land sovereignty against the border wall. I'm an artist and an organizer, and I offer digital communications and event coordination for the team. I met Ale maybe 5 years ago at the National Latina Institute for Reproductive Health. We became besties pretty quickly, and I've been a part of her fight for freedom ever since. As a child of immigrants, I am very passionate and an unconditional solidarity with any people's need and choice to migrate. I do not believe in borders, nor do I believe in the colonized institutions that manage said borders and create systems that target Black and brown bodies. I believe in a world where Ale and all people can live their lives rooted in their own autonomy and choice. And I believe in a world without police and policing, where we as communities take care of our needs without the interruption of the state and capitalistic greed. That is why I fight with Ale. Ale's fight is my fight, and her winning and being able to live autonomously with the people she loves is a win on our path towards our collective freedom. So I'm going to pass the mic now to Gloria, who will introduce themselves.
Hi everyone, hola. My name is Gloria Negrete Lopez and I use she, her, hers pronouns. And before I get started, I wanted to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you today from the traditional territory of the Tohono O'odham as well as the Pascuayaqui, otherwise known as Tucson, Arizona. I'm originally from California, and specifically Anaheim, California, which is a traditional homeland of the Tongva and the Hashiman people. Anaheim is my hometown and it is where my family lives. I start from this place called home because I find it necessary to begin from the place that taught me my earliest teachings around immigration, criminalization, and abolition. I'm a doctoral candidate in gender and women's studies at the University of Arizona, where I'm currently working on a dissertation on the role of abolitionist cultural work, like what you're going to see here today, and how it can be a useful tool in disrupting narratives of immigrant criminality. I am grateful and fortunate to have met Ale in an abolitionist study group. We worked on a virtual abolition teach-in together, and I am currently working on a piece that's featuring her work, and that will be published in about a year from now, and it's also part of my dissertation. And I will pass it on to my comrade Yvette to introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. My name is Yvette, and I am a movement lawyer and podcaster. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I do need to acknowledge that I am on occupied Tohono O'odham and Pascuayaqui land. The podcast that I host and produce, Radio Cachimbona, is an abolitionist podcast that captures the fierce resistance that's happening at the southern Arizona borderlands and beyond. It centers Central American voices and explores my journey as a first-gen movement lawyer. This podcast is part of my commitment to collective change that transcends working within the law, and is also how I came to meet Ale when I interviewed her in 2018 about her deportation defense campaign and her reproductive justice work. And I was truly just so inspired that I became friends with her and sort of naturally joined the team because of how much I believe in the public education aspect of this work. And lastly, I'll pass it on to Ale.
What's up, y'all? This is Alejandra. Thanks, y'all. Y'all are amazing. My team is super amazing. Shout out to them. I'm a community organizer, reproductive justice organizer, and storyteller at the intersections of the criminal injustice and immigrant rights. My pronouns are she and hers. I'm currently in deportation proceedings, and I have been for 9 years now. My case first went really viral when I was redetained by Immigration Customs Enforcement, by ICE, for another 43 days in 2018 after already giving 2 years of my life to be in detention. Luckily enough, I'm here to fight with y'all to abolish ICE because our communities fought for me to come home on bond. Growing up in Arizona, one of the toughest sentencings and over-policed states, and the home of racial profiling, Show Me Your Papers, SB 1070, really has informed who I am now and why I organize against the criminalization of immigrants, and against mass incarceration as an abolitionist. Because as non-citizens and formerly incarcerated people, we are deemed disposable, and I'm here to fight back those labels back. I'm here to fight back. So back to you, Castro.
Before we get this ball rolling, I want to share with y'all the opportunity to join the campaign, follow the campaign, uplift the campaign. Follow the hashtag support don't deport, abolish ICE for repro justice, and most importantly, hashtag keep Ale free. Make sure to visit our website at www.keepalefree.org. You can tweet us, quote us, follow us. You can even screenshot this presentation and repost it on your social media channels. And with Twitter, the Twitter handle KAF campaign, or Instagram at support don't deport. And like any campaign, we need your support. So if you can, please donate. Hit up that Venmo, that Cash App at Alejandra Pablos, and that PayPal at paypal.me, Alejandra Pablos. So I'm gonna pass it on to Ale. Yes, loving all those hashtags, all those hashtags.
Thanks, sis. I'm super excited to be here because today, for the first time at Race Forward, we are going to screen a short film that follows my story around and the story of many organizers in Arizona. A mini documentary that follows me as we fight the immigration enforcement system and where we challenge the notions of what it means for a human being to be fully free. This film that we're about to show you tells the story of how the US government created the deportation machine by intertwining it with criminal law in the context of immigration enforcement. It raises the question of our own attitudes toward those targeted by the police and how that paves the way for more mass criminalization and deportation of immigrants in the country as we see it today. So I just want to shout out the directors, Justine Garcia and Mike Cassidy, and please enjoy Jacinta from Mi Gente, Giovanna, and Maria from Puente, and Viri from Poder, all local organizers in Arizona fighting against la policía y la migra. So go ahead and cue it up, Castro.
So I know that obviously, like, there was things and decisions I made, decisions that had really, grave consequences. But at the time when these things happened, I don't think I really measured that. I grew up in Tucson, Arizona, the south side of Tucson, where being arrested and being on probation, going to court, having police interaction, it was normal. I remember hiding a lot of that from my mom because it was clear that you did not want to be on that side of society. You did not want to be called a criminal.
Americans, not only in the states most heavily affected, but in every place in this country, are rightly disturbed by the large numbers of illegal aliens entering our country. That's why our administration has moved aggressively to secure our borders more by hiring a record number of new border guards, by deporting twice as many criminal aliens as ever before. In the budget I will present to you, we will try to do more to speed the deportation of illegal aliens who are arrested for crimes.
The U.S. already has a whole set of laws for its criminal legal system. In 1996, they passed the 96 immigration laws that kind of gave some of these criminal laws different meaning in the immigration context. So in a lot of ways, they just kind of cut them up, split them up, made the things worse for immigrants, made it easier to put people into deportation proceedings. And now we're seeing the consequences because a lot more people are being searched for by immigration. And so Ale is a clear example of this. Right, there's 2 charges that in many states would be considered a misdemeanor, and because of the 96 immigration laws, they can attach things to them that now make it so that she is found deportable in court, and now we have to have a whole campaign to be able to keep her here with her community.
At Eloy opened up my eyes that there was a whole world of injustices, right? A whole world of systemic injustice, and the people that are actually here are not the people that they keep talking about that they're incarcerating. It's actually like mamas, family members, workers, people going to school. I knew that I had to stand on these feet and look at them straight in the eye and like, I'm taking it on.
We're gonna get this together. My name is Alejandra.
You know, Ale is a natural organizer. She makes connections with people and she makes connections across issues.
And Ale being open and bold and saying we are human and this is normal, we don't deserve to be punished in this way, and we don't deserve to be criminalized in this way, and we don't deserve to be separated from our families, has allowed families that I know personally to be more open about their stories.
So the criminalization system impacts a lot of people in the US. It impacts immigrants who are currently locked up, that are serving sentences for the criminal system, and that will possibly be transferred over to the immigration system. It impacts immigrants who might have been released from the criminal system, but don't know when ICE is gonna come knocking on their door. So we see that actually the reach of this is much bigger than just maybe people who are currently in deportation proceedings or in the detention system right now, because anyone who has criminal record or has any contact with police can immediately be dragged into the deportation dragnet.
Our goal for this work in the criminalization system is to stop people from even going into it. And we stop it by holding these police departments accountable, making sure they don't continue to racially profile, decriminalizing the ordinances or the laws that they're trying to enforce.
We're seeing people picked up, in different forms. It could be traffic violations, it can be old cases that are just opening up because you got pulled over by DPS or MCSO or PPD. Just a simple fact that they just got racially profiled on the street and now they have to show some kind of identification, which they do not have.
Then we do work while people are inside, whether that be inside of the Maricopa County jail system or in one of the detention centers 45 minutes away from here. And then lastly, help families, whether someone is getting out of detention. Puente has helped reunite over 400 families without charging a dime, without being attorneys.
And what I know that needs to change is actually the community around us, right? And by that community, I mean the way we see and hold each other accountable, right? Part of the community is the police, right? Is surveillance. It's all of that culture. So transforming that, if some of that doesn't work, we need to reject it. And that's where the word abolishment comes from, right? It doesn't work, get rid of it, dismantle it. Detention made me want more justice. Nobody's disposable, and people have the right to safety, self-determination, housing, food, love. And that's not what prisons give us. Life in detention, it made me fall in love with our people all over again. I became a human rights defender. And I will speak up against injustice forever, every single day of my life, wherever I go, Because until we are all free, I am free.
Okay, y'all. So I want to thank everybody for watching that short documentary. I know that what you just saw was extremely powerful. So we want to take a minute to check in on ourselves and reground before we keep the conversation going. I want to invite everyone to join me in a collective breath so that we can reground ourselves before moving forward. We're going to inhale for 4 seconds, hold that breath for 4 seconds, and then release it for 6 seconds. And as you inhale, imagine this breath entering your nose, filling up your lungs, your stomach, your diaphragm, all up until your torso feels full, your core feels full. Hold into that sacred breath and allow that oxygen to nourish your cells. And as you release, imagine all of your tension leaving your body from your core and expelling through your body's extremities. So we're going to take a deep breath at your pace. Hold for 4. And release for 6. Take another deep breath in. Hold. Release. Let's take one more breath. Deep in. Hold. And release. Feel free to shake it out. Thank y'all. So please, while you're at home, check in with yourself and ask yourself what emotions are coming up for you and why. Ale, I want to check in on you. How are you doing? And what emotions are coming up?
Yeah, thanks, sis. Thanks everybody for breathing. Breathing has really helped to stay in my body in moments where I feel really overwhelmed. And honestly, even though I've seen this film so many times, it just still invokes so much emotion because it's literally a continuation of what I'm doing, right? And what I'm facing, and this just continual threat to my autonomy. And I always have to be on guard. And also this beautiful film, it just made me allowed people and allowed myself to see me in such a vulnerable moment too. Like, I'm actually not that strong all the time. I'm actually not that tough. Like, this shit is unnatural and this is awful and this is not justice, right? And the reality, I mean, you didn't get to see my family here either, but like the trauma that it has on my family too, my mother, you know, every time I'm around her is when she's the most happiest, but it's also when she feels that every knock could be that knock, right? If she's with me, that traffic stop could be the traffic stop that's gonna, again, separate me from her for another 2 years. So this film did really great. I'm just really empowered by the organizing that is happening. What did y'all think?
Ale, thank you so much for sharing. I was really moved by the person who was narrating and saying that you have a skill for making connections with everyone that you meet. It really caused me to reflect on how in our intros, we all literally just said that we happened to do one event or one work thing with you, like an abolition study group or a podcast interview. And we just loved you so much and connected with you so much on a human level that we are here doing this, fighting to keep you here. And yeah, just love you, Ale.
Yeah, thank you.
And I just want to say thank you so much, Ale, for sort of being vulnerable with us, right? For sharing with us your story and for reliving that trauma, right? Because that's trauma that gets enacted and it's something that our bodies remember. Our bodies can recall certain things. And I want to linger on what you said at the very end, right? you know, how none of us are free until we all are free, and really reminding us, right, that, you know, that this is a long-term project, that there's still people that are being separated. There's still families being ripped apart by this. There's still lingering trauma that stays with people for generations. As someone who dealt with a parent's incarceration and deportation, I definitely feel that it's something that is definitely part of like our bodies, right? That we feel certain emotions, right? And remembering those emotions, but also carrying that struggle forward to remember that this is a constant struggle, right? And we are all united and we're all here to ensure that Ale's bodily autonomy is respected and that she's able to stay with us here, organizing, doing fierce workshops like this, and knowing that, right? And chinga la mira, and I wrote it here, hashtag keep Ale free. None of us are free until we're all are free.
Absolutely. Thank you to the team for sharing. I know I definitely want to, you know, Ale's my homegirl, I love you. You know, so it really me choca, like it really impacts me to see anybody, you know, to be going through this type of thing. And also the ways that it just doesn't impact just you. It impacts you, your nucleus, your family nucleus, your community, the folks that you impact and change. It's just, it's not just one person. It's not just plucking out one person or whatever. So it's just like the systems got me messed up. Another thing that, you know, made me cringe within the video too, and it always makes me cringe, just the use of dehumanizing language by the government and by these authoritative figures, you know, the use of illegal alien, where it's just like, yo, no one's illegal on stolen land, first of all, but how a lot of our work is the humanization of our stories, of our narratives, in order for folks to truly understand that's just like, yo, like this doesn't, like you said, it doesn't work. It needs to be abolished completely. So as folks saw in this video, there are many ways that this so-called justice system is routinely criminalizing Black and brown bodies and making bodily autonomy impossible, you know? So Ale, can you jump in right now and share other ways that people's reproductive ability is criminalized?
Thank you. And I can go on for longer than we have time here because there's so many ways under white supremacist, imperialistic administration and government and country to name all the barriers that are like blocking our own autonomy. But when I'm a reproductive justice organizer, like I mentioned, I really focus on state-sanctioned violence when I talk about what that means, right? Making decisions over your own body. And here we have a definition around what reproductive justice means. But again, it's having bodily autonomy, having decisions over your own body. And we can't do that when there's ICE, right? We can't do that when there's cages. We can't do that when there's racist laws, right? Laws that are just here to cage us. So that's why I fight my own deportation case, and I fight it publicly. I fight it with the team. I fight it based on popular education to free folks, right? To understand that prisons, ICE, and police culture are an immediate threat to my body, my life, to my sexuality, and my production. The fear of being caged daily and kidnapped by your own government is not safe. It's not a safe community. This deportation really has informed and impacted the way that I make decisions over my reproductive choices. For myself, I can't even imagine thinking of creating a family right now when I know that ICE can be at the door anytime to take me again. I was a permanent resident, and I still got placed into deportation proceedings after, going through the justice process when I first pled guilty to the charges that I had, and ICE still took me. So let's not be fooled. It is not about justice. It's about cleansing this country for what it wants it to look like. It is a white America, right? So it's, again, when there's lost place for you to literally be caged up, there can be no decision making. I'm forced to make the decisions that I've already made. Because of this deportation system. So I also want to highlight that even when people do decide to have pregnancies, right, we still get criminalized for them, right? To this day, we have people getting arrested and charged criminally for losing a pregnancy, right? So those are the things that are happening right now, not a long time ago, but we're still criminalizing pregnancy loss. Those are reproductive rights that people are facing barriers, right? When I think about getting pregnant, I'm scared to get into a car accident, for example, when then I'm gonna be charged, right, with losing the pregnancy. So those are the things that are barriers right now. We have the Supreme Court cases right now. We have the Supreme Court judges that are about to overturn Roe v. Wade, right, or that want to overturn the Healthcare Act, for example. And those are threats to us making decisions to create families, right? And even when we don't want to create families, we want to have healthcare, right? And the Supreme Court is another threat to that, right? Or those judges that are that those 192 judges that, for example, Trump has already put in place, and none of them are people of color or Black folks, right? So those are some of the barriers that I can talk about. I know that inside of detention, the people that I've met inside of detention were people that were fleeing to be safe from their governments that don't take care of them and don't defend them, right? They were searching for livable wages. They were also searching for safety away from domestic violence. So those are the people that are inside, and those are the people that are facing needs, or that are facing repression over making decisions over their own bodies, migrating to look for that safety. How about y'all? Can y'all add anything? Maybe Yvette or Gloria?
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about, actually, thanks for mentioning the Supreme Court, because I want to talk about this 1927 decision that the Supreme Court entered into called Buck versus Bell, because it's a really good example of how the US legal system has been used to control people's reproductive ability. And I do need to note that ultimately this goes back to the inception of the US and slavery, where people were seen as property, and it was the law of the US that was utilized in order to reinforce this economic system through police and prisons.
Right.
And I have to note that that is where it started. And I wanted to bring up this case because it re-highlights how incarceration has been used specifically as a justification for intervening in people's reproductive choices. At the turn of the 20th century, eugenics became a really popular idea, which is in the same intellectual lineage of Darwinism. It's this idea that there are some people who are weaker than others, and that instead of quote unquote, them being a burden on society and on government, the people who are espousing these ideologies were espousing sterilization so that their children could not be burdens on the state. And this occurred in Virginia in 1924, where there was a law called the Eugenical Sterilization Act that allowed for the sexual sterilization of people who were in criminal custody or people who were committed to civil institutions, which was the case of the plaintiff in this case.
And what we're seeing right now too, with the amount of hysterectomies happening within detention centers across the country, is trash.
Mm-hmm. So there was a challenge brought to the law based on the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, because allegedly the US law protects everybody equally. And the judges held that this law was fine. It did not violate the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution. And it really did base its reasoning in eugenics at the time. It claimed that developmental disabilities are inherited and that the state had a right to sterilize folks in their custody because there was a governmental interest in stopping this burden.
Governmental interest, what does that mean?
Right, exactly. And the last thing I want to say before passing on to Gloria is just that we need to look into what these civil institutions were ostensibly about, because they were allegedly about mental health. But when you look into the backstories of the women who were placed into these civil institutions, it was more likely than not that they were being sexually deviant by society's standards. The plaintiff in this case was put in the civil institution because she was a teenage mother who was not married. And her mother was also placed in this institution because she had been arrested prior as a sex worker. And all that is missing from the judicial opinion. but really critical to note as we continue thinking more about incarceration and controlling people's reproductive abilities and sex lives. Gloria, what are other ways that reproductive ability is criminalized?
Yes, thank you, Yvette. There's so much in what you mentioned that I want to sort of kind of talk in relation with you. So definitely, I appreciate you bringing up eugenics, right, and really thinking about this ideology of whiteness as something to be that you should ascend to, right? It's this, and anything that veers from whiteness or and that's also where we begin to see things that are classified as like normal, right? And anything that deviates from that is seen as criminalized or seen as deviant. But I also wanted to really think about some historical examples, but particularly about immigrant women. And so here I want to bring up the example of Margaret Sanger, also the Planned Parenthood founder, who's and she started Planned Parenthood, right? Because she went into these impoverished neighborhoods in big cities, and particularly saw these immigrant women from Eastern European countries that were not considered white, right? Having way too many children. And here's where we begin to see the conversations around birth control and wanting to sort of to control women that were not seen as white, controlling their reproductive functions, right? And we see how whiteness is excluded for some, but yet open to others. But, you know, we also see how Native, Black, Latinx women, their reproductive abilities is often coerced by the nation state if they are deemed quote unquote criminal. For example, we hear of Black and non-Black women of color that are incarcerated, and not only are they deemed unfit, but they will also have their children taken away once they receive this label. And here I really want to turn to the work of Marta Escobar in her book, Captivity Beyond Prisons. I'm going to read a little excerpt where she says, quote, once again, she's talking about Latina immigrants, are classified as, quote, criminal aliens. Immigrants are marked for removal from the nation state and permanently banned from returning. Thus, I argue that criminalization renders them legally irrecuperable. Incarcerated US citizens also experience certain levels of irrecuperability. For example, several US states have implemented legislation that permanently disfranchise people that have been convicted of a felony, right? So it's also important for us to think about why abolition is so important for us, right? And I should have said end quote, but really thinking about what does irrecuperability mean? Who is able to have access to that? And as Ale in her story sort of mentions that, right? Who is granted irrecuperability and who is denied that and who is able to have access to that, right? And so really thinking about this notion of criminalization, who are the folks that get punished? And very often we see that it's, Black and non-Black women of color. So the only way to get rid of criminalization in our communities is to embrace abolition. Speaking of prison abolition, how would you all describe that? How is it tied to reproductive justice? If you want to start, Ale, or anyone else wants to jump in.
I'm down. I love it. You had me at, let's talk about abolition. I'm like, yes, I want to. And for me, abolition, again, I didn't just wake up also talking about abolition, right? It wasn't the first thing I was doing when I was organizing. So I learned a lot from critical resistance. But to me, when I just talk about abolition and what it means to me, it's about creation, right? It's about getting rid of the things like y'all heard in the video that don't work, and what are we creating those systems, right? So that we don't need cages, so we don't need prisons, so we don't need police out there, right? When our communities have been forced into desperation, right? They've made it seem the country, the system, right, as if we are the ones that are the issues, right? But again, this is more systemic when we're talking about the society that we live in, right? So abolition is not just about getting rid of the prisons, the cages, the juvenile detention centers, the immigrant detention centers. It's about undoing all of the way that we're seen. how we respond to issues, right? How we respond to society, the punitive ways that we're working under. Abolition is also about centering queer, gender nonconforming, and trans and undocumented and Black women and girls at the forefront when we're talking about what are the things that we really need, right? What are those things that the future that we're going to create? And honestly, we usually focus on the prison industrial complex, right? And that includes court systems, detention centers, right? Probation, because people are still at the hands of the prison industrial complex when they leave the prison systems. And it's really important to understand also that immigration and ICE is part of that prison industrial complex, right? It's the cornerstone of mass incarceration right now. And that's why we organize with other abolitionists, other like-minded individuals to have collective learning and also collective release of shame, right? And it's not just about the prison culture, right? It's about the policing culture within each other as well. And we understand too that it's really difficult to fight on this stolen land when there is no justice, not even for Native people right now. So when abolition is attained, that's when there's reproductive justice, full autonomy over our bodies. So reproductive justice is about creating a world where we don't need cages, where we have food, jobs, healthcare, mental health care, housing, and we can make the decisions that are best for us, whether we want to parent or whether we don't. So a world with no barriers is what we want to have. What about y'all?
Yeah, so I definitely want to jump on that abolition train that we're on right now. And thank you, Ale, for talking about the prison industrial complex. And here, I pulled a quote from this scholar, this abolitionist scholar named Dean Spade, who really talks about how far-reaching PIC is, right? So instead of using the term prison industrial complex, suggests that multiple connected processes and forces determine how certain populations get labeled as criminal, how certain behaviors and actions come to be classified as crimes, how racist ideas are mobilized to justify an expansion of imprisonment systems, how various financial interests are implicated in motivating law enforcement expansion, how criminalization and imprisonment filter through every aspect of how we live and understand ourselves in the world. Living in society defined by criminalization, imprisonment shapes how we design, build schools, discipline kids who are perceived to misbehave, end quote. And I wanted to highlight this quote, right, for a variety of reasons. But number one, right, how the PIC is embedded in every aspect of our lives, whether it be through the construction, whether it's people that work there, whether it's family members that have ties to policing, right? And really thinking about how the PIC has become something so rooted and to understand how it's widespread and how we can begin to slowly chip it away, right? I also want to highlight some things, especially around the term quote unquote criminal, how one is not born a criminal, but rather becomes one through laws and policies. And I'm sure Yvette will have more to add from the legal standpoint. When you hear people using narratives that are talking about criminalization being inherent in certain communities, that's racism, right? That's them using, again, dehumanizing language to justify caging people. And there's also scholars in the field of education that have written about the school to prison pipeline and how statistics of schools and whether or not people are moving forward or are graduating and folks that are being pushed out of school, those statistics are directly linked to how many beds should a prison have, right? So really thinking about how both schools and prisons are very much aligned, and definitely read there's some amazing work that's being done with those connections, especially around Black and Brown youth. Prisons are ingrained within various aspects of our lives, and we must figure out how we can slowly begin to chip it away. And this is why abolition is so important and why it's necessary for us to begin this work. So Yvette, I know that I mentioned, some policies and laws, and I was wondering, how do you approach abolition from your perspective as like a lawyer?
Yeah, thank you, Gloria. I appreciate you talking about how the prison industrial complex is a system that is embedded everywhere in our lives, and that could not be more true for me as a person that works within the legal system. I need to start out by saying that it's critical to understand that the law is just one tool in our toolbox. And as Audre Lorde has told us, the master's tools cannot dismantle the master's house. We cannot solely rely on the legal system to gain our liberation. That said, though, there's still, if you are a person with legal knowledge, if you have a JD, there are different skill sets for these different tactics that we're employing, and there's a space for you in the movement for reproductive justice, for abolition. If you're a person who wants to use the long groundbreaking ways, then plug in. The ways you engage in lawyering with an abolitionist goal in mind is you have to ask yourself, how can I gain the release of people detained while also weakening the detention scheme? And it's important that both of those things happen at the same time, because oftentimes the only solutions available through a courtroom end up being remedies that end up in counterproductive things, like the agencies being given more money to improve conditions when we know that's not what they do. An example of abolitionist lawyering is, for example, we heard about a judge ordering adelanto to release everybody that's detained until they get to 475 people or less. That is an abolitionist move. I try my best to move through the nonprofit industrial complex as a movement lawyer, someone who practices law and uses their legal knowledge to advance the goals of community, and redistributing resources from large nonprofits in order to do that is really complicated on the day-to-day, honestly, but I try. Ultimately, the court is not going to order ICE abolished. We cannot rely on the legal courtroom to gain liberation. This is actually completely where the importance of cultural organizing comes in, which is what I want to talk about next, and how the movement to abolish ICE is ultimately a reproductive justice fight, and is one that requires cultural organizing.
Yes, thank you for all you do this with lawyering and being an abolitionist in there, because I don't know how you quit every fucking day.
I appreciate that. I feel very seen right now. Yeah, so we've kind of been going through all these ways in which people's reproductive ability is criminalized, but this happens also specifically in the ICE context. We've seen where Jane Doe was a teenager who was in ICE custody, and the government was trying to block her from getting an abortion, even though she had the right to do so. And after lawyers intervened there, they found out that this was actually a wider practice that ICE was engaging in. And they were doing things like requiring pregnant teens to go to religiously affiliated anti-abortion crisis pregnancy centers for counseling that urged them to not undergo their abortion without withholding, and also withholding critical health information from them, requiring them to have medically unnecessary sonograms against their will, and actually just blocking teens from getting into their cars to go and get their counseling for their pregnancy options.
Do they force you or they deny you?
Yeah. Yeah. And luckily, a judge did intervene and halted that practice in 2018. But ultimately, and this is what I'm saying, like, the law does get us what we need, because these are rogue agencies that are committed to white supremacy. We saw, Castro mentioned the Irwin County hysterectomies that happened a few weeks ago. Obviously, if ICE is still continuing to detain people, it's also still infringing on their reproductive ability. Yeah. The last thing I just want to say is that, family separation that occurred in 2018 in the summer at the border activated a lot of people in thinking about migrant rights. And I just want people to think about how the immigration system as a whole, like any enforcement action, is one that results in family separation. So even though we have that image in our heads of a toddler being ripped out of a mother's hand at the border, like regardless of how an enforcement action particularly goes down, that's still family separation, and we can't have reproductive justice until people can live with their families together. Ale, can you kind of break down more why abolishing ICE is reproductive justice as well?
Yes, thank you. I could definitely add a little bit. You definitely did a great job. And again, for us, the way that The reason why we do this work, this campaign, this political education, this popular education, is to really, for it to be clear that the only way that we can attain any justice, have any justice, to dismantle the things that we just mentioned, right? All those barriers that we've been talking about. Those are systems that are a threat to our safety and our bodily autonomy. So abolishing ICE is reproductive justice. ICE is only here to target, cage, and deport. They're not here to answer to improve any conditions. They're not here to answer any social issues. They're just here to target, cage, and deport. And right now they're basically getting the most money out of any law enforcement, right? And they're, again, going very rogue, right? So they don't care about people migrating to work or to reunify with their families, right? Whether people have families here or not, it is still a right to migrate, right? And to look for a life to create, right? To remain and to move. So a little bit more about why abolishing ICE is reproductive justice is because, again, abolish ICE is literally using and it's using distorted criminal laws, to migrate, to criminalize migration. And that's illegal, right? Right now we're talking about detention, where it is a civic matter, but now we've been able, through the Department of Justice and Jeff Sessions, right, to literally get away with actually criminalizing and treating all people that are coming here, right, with the right to ask for asylum and treat them like they deserve to be caged up, right? So I think, again, the fact that these exist, this new infrastructure exists to just cage, deport, and target, it just needs to be dismantled. It's an immediate threat. The people that we're caging in this country need support, right? We need support, we need resources, and not incarceration, not deportation, not more criminalization. In this country, over more than 150 million people are in poverty. That's not an I issue, that's an us issue, right? This government wants to blame those people, right? Those people that can get those decent jobs because we're deciding not to pay, or blaming transgender people and gender nonconforming people for the medical care that they're being denied, right? So it's just, again, it's a moment for us to really push back on, why do we need ICE? This is not justice. This is not keeping anybody safe, and nobody can make the best decisions over them when ICE is out there literally hunting people down. We've heard plenty, I don't hear a lot about immigration stories. Most of the time when people get into deportation proceedings, they're being hunted down, coming to their homes, and interrupting life. And I just want to mention really quickly that one story that really stood up to me when I was inside of detention is my friend Diana, who shared, once they saw all the attention that I was getting because of my abortion work, my reproductive work, I started sharing what kind of work I do and the organizing and storytelling. And she shared, wow, like, I have 5 children. And if I would have met people like you, and if I would have known more about my bodily autonomy and the decisions that I will be supported in, like, I may not have 5 children that I'm separated from right now, right? And me as an organizer, what was I able to tell her in that moment when I know that this system is caging her for no other reason than separating her from her family? So the people inside are fleeing and are looking for support. We are born with agency, but these systems are taking away that agency and ripping us from that. So again, the truth of the matter is the governments are not keeping us safe. People are fleeing from those governments. The same people that are supposed to take care of us are actually putting us in threat. But I'll pass it back to you, Gloria.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, Ale. And one of the things that I think really stood out to me in your conversation was this understanding this, how through your own storytelling and sharing your story with those on the inside, that you were able to make connections, right? Really able to make connections where someone can sort of take a step back and see, oh, like, this is what, like, my life would have looked like had I had the language, had I had the support system to really think about it. And I think it really challenges this notion of immigrant women as being these passive subjects, when in actuality, right, they're having really important, amazing, critical conversations about reproductive justice. They are sort of embodying reproductive justice in their storytelling. And I think oftentimes we are reminded that that women of color are often sort of the what gets left over and are not really at the center of really being focused on with regards to reproductive justice. And this is a reminder that this work has to be centered around non-white bodies, non-normative bodies, and really thinking about that. And I wanted, to sort of transition us into thinking about, we've talked about abolition, we've talked about reproductive justice, but how can we reach the masses, right? How can this work circulate to other folks? So I want to pass this to Castro to maybe share with us how the Keep Ale Free campaign has been reaching the masses, and all of that really amazing work that y'all do.
So thank you, Gloria. So I want to share a quote by jazz poet and musician Gilbert Scott Heron, who once said, "The revolution will not be televised." And that statement to me is very profound and true, because it is of the utmost importance that all movements questioning and challenging the norms within a corrupt society document their path in order to inspire and motivate the people to fight and maintain collective and dignified justice and freedom. So what the Keep Ale Free movement does is that it uses these powerful tools of digital media in order to uplift its core objective of reproductive justice for all through the concrete actions of abolishing ICE and all institutions of policing. It's also intentional that we're sharing these hashtags with you right now because it's the power of the hashtag. It's the power of social media. Hashtag free them all, hashtag abolition, hashtag keep Ale free. So what you see on the screen right now is a screenshot of an Instagram post from Ale's account where where her and a friend went to Coachella in 2019. Ale was gifted tickets to Coachella via a performing artist who was familiar with Ale's case. And Ale and the team, we took the opportunity to take up necessary space in a predominantly white and wealthy music event and uplift the abolish ICE narrative. And we used, as you see in this picture, Ale wore a traditional Mexican skirt with the words abolish ICE while posing in front of a large cactus structure. Ale intentionally used her post to describe what abolishing ICE means and the steps needed to attain abolition, which are to defund ICE so that these violent programs no longer exist, in addition to other systems of policing within society, to defund detention and decriminalize migration. She shares this message all while using her fine acidness, her beauty, and her culture to attract her followers to engage with the post and ultimately learn and participate in abolitionist discourse and analysis. So the Keep Ale Free team is culturally organizing through technology and social media by placing art and culture at the center of our content and is using narratives that are representative of her lived experience and the experiences of the most marginalized within our society. So that's just one aspect in terms of the digital cultural organizing, which we do on social media. Another aspect of the work that we've done is through different multimedia platforms. We're learning that, to do dope cultural work, it really does bring about change, and we're using culture to change the world. For at the end of the day, before policy changes, before economics changes, the structures within our society can change when our culture changes. So I'm going to pass the mic now to Ale, who's going to talk about another aspect of our cultural organizing work.
Yay, thanks for that, comms digital queen. But yeah, there's a lot of cultural work happening. I didn't even know I was doing cultural work, just somebody named it that. I think I'm really excited to show y'all the Chinga la Migra video, introduce y'all to the Chinga la Migra tour, but a little bit more of the just day-by-day cultural organizing and cultural work that I'm a part of. I think it's just more based on just relation, right? And talking to each other and sharing story and doing it through the things that make me happy, right? Or the things that are familiar to us, right? So one piece of work is just that I really enjoy doing right now is that's not necessarily like my deportation cases, like creative design work and visuals and working with designers. And we got for example, Virgin Mary a picture, and it says under there, chinga la migra, right? And even though a lot of our communities would be like, oh no, like La Virgencita would never say that. It's something, it's very idolized, right? It's the Virgin Mary, but it's like, no, actually the Virgin Mary is the queen of migrants, right? The Virgin Mary wants to chingar la migra also, right? Wants us to fight back, right? So just even engaging our family members that may not be talking about abolishing ICE through this visual, right, of the Virgencita. So that's just another example. I use my nails a lot, my fashion, to like put messages on me. So I'm always engaging people and talking to me about these things. They ask, what does that mean? So I get to talk about abolition. So I really love the adornment piece, but mostly excited about the Chinga la Migra tour. So I'm also a Mi Gente member, like a lot of us in my deportation team. It's a Latinx digital organizing hub who right now is focusing on Fuera Trump, and you'll all be seeing this. I don't know who's going to be your president, but shout outs to us in resisting. But Mi Gente, again, it has really good examples of the way that we've been amplifying the struggle of the Chinga la Migra fight. And it has also documented the joy and the resilience from our families that are doing so. So a good example is going to be one of the videos that we're going to queue up right now. Chinga la Migra Tour was a multi-city organizing tour and web series that was spearheaded by Mi Gente. I was the co-host and one of the creative directors, and I'm just really excited to show y'all. And let's talk about, again, when the administration was ramping up attacks, the community was also ramping up the way that we organized back.
Hola, mi gente. We just got to the second stop of the Chinga la Migra tour. We're going to be hitting several cities in North Carolina. Our folks here have been hit the hardest. ICE has been raiding their communities, separating them from their families. And not only that, the sheriff and his racist friends want to bring back 287G. Miren esta chingadera. But our folks are saying, hell no, we won't go back.
Hola, compas. Estamos en un parqueo de trailers aquí en Burlington, Carolina del Norte. En el pasado, este condado de Alamance tuvo el programa de 287G. Es un acuerdo, un contrato entre el sheriff local y la migra. Y cada uno de los agentes del sheriff pueden actuar como agente de inmigración dentro de nuestras comunidades. Durante el 2007 al 2012, este vecindario fue uno de los más afectados porque el sheriff ponía retenes justo afuera en las entradas del parqueo y detenían a gente. Ahorita está nuevamente la propuesta para que este programa regrese al condado y las personas decimos no más, no nos vamos a dejar, vamos a resistir este ataque en nuestras comunidades, no vamos a permitir que esto suceda.
Immigration has come into our community and basically ripped families apart. It happened to me a few weeks back with my stepfather. He was throwing out the trash and two ICE officers stopped him and took him away. Like, I rushed home from school. I saw my mother in the corner, like crying, sobbing, like terrified, to open the door. And at that point, I was infuriated because I had never seen like such a strong woman like do that. It shouldn't happen to any family. It's happening here. Like, what are we gonna do about it?
No 287G. No 287G. No nos vamos a dejar.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Emma. Este es nuestro hogar. Estamos aquí y no tenemos miedo, ¿verdad? En el 2010 muchos de nosotros vivimos esto. El sheriff decía, tráiganme los cometacos. Entonces aquí estamos, ¿verdad? ¿Y dónde están los tacos?
Aquí están.
¿Dónde están los tacos?
¡Tacos quiere!
¡Tacos le damos!
¡Tacos quiere!
¡Tacos le damos!
¿Cómo te sentiste poder hacer ese acto de resistencia?
Hombre, fíjate que yo me sentí bastante nerviosa porque de hecho nunca había pisado yo ese departamento, pero me di fuerza yo misma porque yo sé que tengo bastante gente al lado mío.
quiere bailar! ¡Que brinque el
Estamos aquí en Nashville, Carolina del Norte. Estamos en Dulce Lomita, que es una cooperativa de viviendas. Es otra manera como resistimos como comunidad estos ataques que inmigración y otras agencias tienen contra nuestra gente. Y pues prácticamente el 14 de abril vino inmigración y se llevó a 26 personas de nuestros vecindarios de Asheville, cual fue muy afectado igual como Hendersonville. Y nuestra comunidad pues colectivamente resistió en contra de estos ataques. Estuvimos ayudando a las familias y seguimos ayudándoles. Y una semana después, Inmigración trató de venir y hizo una celebración, un picnic, le dijeron. Y pues nosotros llegamos ahí con comunidad y un grupo de banda y dijimos, basta, no vamos a tener festejos en nuestras áreas después de una semana de devastaciones. De 40 minutos ahí estuvimos y se tuvieron que ir porque hicimos mucha bulla, que dijeron no vamos a estar acá. Y pues nuestra comunidad sigue luchando, seguimos aprendiendo, seguimos educándonos y resistiendo en contra de estos ataques de inmigración en la fecha.
We're here today to tell Sheriff McDonald goodbye. He has been collaborating with ICE for years now. He's re-signed 287G. He met with fucking Jeff Sessions and Trump. And today we're here to tell him goodbye, tell him that he only has 171 days left in office. And we hope for one day where Hendersonville will not have 287G. DHS, you can't fuck with me, don't get on. DHS, you can't fuck with me, don't get on.
Vamos a chingar la migra today, chingar la migra tomorrow, and chingar la migra till we have a society and a community where we don't have to live with ICE anymore. Tenemos un mensaje bien claro para el Sheriff McDonald, que se largue. Y queremos decirle al Sheriff Griffin que cuando entre en la oficina lo primero que haga es tirar para siempre el programa 287G. Migra no, people sí, migra no, people sí, migra no, people sí, migra no.
We out here with song, y'all, part of the Chinga La Migra tour, and we just left the sheriff office where we're excited to give him his walking papers. He has 171 more days to be in this office. We understand as a queer liberation organization that our destinies are deeply connected. So we have a vision around abolition. Police violence, state violence, ICE violence is tearing up all of our families. And if we're willing to die together, we might as well build a liberation movement together. So let's do it, y'all.
Okay, so how was the Chinga La Migra tour for y'all? What are some key things that stood out?
That was so good. First of all, Mary Hooks from Song Southerners Are New Ground. Please go follow them. They're the future. The fact that she was able to say, if we're gonna die together, we might as well organize together. Like that is so powerful. And I'm just like, wow, I missed that. I didn't catch that. And I'm just like, that's real because we're already at the center of it, right? We talk about being in the margins. We are at the center, and we might as well go all out and really like build together. So wow.
I really appreciated the taco imagery as a way to kind of like reframe and point out the racism of this public official. I appreciated the spectacle of it, like, because I think like, Ale being at Coachella with her folklorico dress is a spectacle as well. And it's like, it's funny because, the racism that we experience is fucking debilitating and tiring, and it's so necessary to have those moments of rejuvenation where we're taking that back and we're reclaiming and also bringing in people with us through the spectacle of it. So that was really cool. And also that's it.
I definitely like loved all like the performative, right? The really intense cultural work that that one has to really think through, right, to carry out, whether it's the taco imagery, whether it's the band, right, showing up in a place where law enforcement was celebrating that they had done these raids, and they show up and they're like, we're not going to let you have peace. We're not going to let you have this little celebration because you can't celebrate when families are being ripped apart. Like I really, that sort of like, oh yeah, how can we make people's lives less comfortable, right? How can we make you feel uncomfortable and make you have to sort of have to give the community some type of like explanation for what you did? And so I really appreciate that. That was awesome. And the cultural work, like, yeah, from you know, the mariachi playing to the tacos to the band, to the dancing, all of that.
From the spectacles that you said, or the you know, the performative stuff, the wild stuff, I think some people also miss, like, for example, the homie that was talking about the milpitas, right? The alternatives that they're building, the co-ops, right? These folks don't call themselves abolitionists, but they're fucking abolitionists, right? They're living already because these are the necessities that have been, or the basic needs that have been attacked, right? We saw how ICE has stopped people at traffic. They stopped the homegirl's dad, stepdad, taking out trash. These are regular things. So what do we have? What else do we have? A choice is to fight back and have that joy, right? And they're hitting us at the basic needs, so we're organizing in this way. So I thought that was really beautiful. Shout out to co-ops everywhere. What about you, Castro?
I mean, I love the use of the word spectacle, but yeah, just like shoving the things that they use to break us down. Like, yeah, we eat tacos, and now we're gonna tell you that we're not gonna pass this piece of legislation on a taco. You know?
Right. And that part, that senora was her first time going. Like, nobody knows what those buildings that incarcerate us. A lot of the times we see those buildings in our neighborhoods, in Black and brown neighborhoods. That's a court, that's the DMV passing our information to the court, that's the detention center, that's the jail, right? And like she said it, right? It was the first time that I've come into these headquarters and I was able to deliver my message, right? Super powerful.
And it's beautiful that the tour can create that bridge, you know, that opportunity for folks to politicize, to radicalize themselves, to preach their already abolitionist like frame of mind and way of living and stuff, and connect the dots and be just like, okay, yes, this is what we're going towards. And definitely another aspect of the videos that I love and what we're gonna tap into now is just, again, thinking about the spectacle and the aesthetic, using power, using femme power, using creativity, creative forms of expression and ways of reclaiming the self and the body to share certain messages. So I'm going to share this slide now. And we're going to talk about, you know, poder estética, like aesthetic power. So as you saw in these videos, Ale's pretty fly girl, you know. I saw with the big ass ponytail and everything, the flowers in her hair. She has incredible style and creativity, and she adorns herself intentionally. She's unapologetic and radical, and you can even see it right now in this session. You know, she's using fashion to say a message: melt ice, burn prisons. Shout out to Thad, the organizer. But that radical statement on a piece of fashion, like that's it. She adorns her criminalized body and delivers messages of abolition that challenge respectability politics within movements and the idea of what type of bodies get to amplify messages of freedom and justice. It is intentional that Ale is out there on the front lines being the messenger as a femme, as a woman, as somebody who is unapologetic about their sexuality, you know, and their body, you know, because usually we have this, that you know, the leaders of the revolution are supposed to be dressed in all Black and be super conservative and assert themselves with a certain aggression, where she's like, okay, it doesn't necessarily have to look like that, because that's not all of us either. You know, who gets to be the leader? Who gets to be heard? Are they sexy? Can they be sexy? Can they be fat? Can they be femme? Can they be gender nonconforming? Can they be queer, differently abled? You know, abolitionists come in every single shape and color and creed and everything. So Ale's campaign has impacted the digital realm and social justice movements, and it's even infiltrated academia and higher ed, which is why I'm going to shift it to Gloria, who's going to dive a little deeper into this analysis. She wrote a soon to be published article on femme-aesthetic and digital cultural organizing, which really inspired the structure of this presentation. All you, Gloria.
Awesome. So thank you so much, Castro. So yeah, like I wrote this piece called "I'm gonna Make It Look Fly: Abolitionist feminist aesthetic, coding, and fashion and adornment. And in that piece, I was really inspired, and I was also very moved by my community of homies and homegirls that I really wanted. I saw this as a labor of love because I was so inspired by their creativity, by their adornment, by their fashioning, by this unapologetic feminist that isn't about that is rooted in abolition, and that is rooted in abolitionist politics, and to really say, to really say that abolition also influences the things that I wear, the way that I adorn myself, right? And as sort of like Alice stated a little bit earlier, right? And even within nails and expression, right? And how literally saying fuck ice on your nails and letting your nail technician do that, how that inspires a conversation. And all of a sudden you're having these abolitionist conversations in these femme places, where you can start, where you can have this conversation and you can start to talk about critically, right? About prisons, about criminalization. And so for me, it was really a love letter. And like I stated, right, for me, I really look at abolitionist cultural work, which I argue that it's a long-term strategy that embraces prison abolition and that views culture as a tool to embrace decarceration, dismantling. And so what does it mean to bring in prison abolition within the context of immigration? Immigrant rights language up until a few years ago, right, was very exclusionary. It was very much about, no one is illegal, we're not criminals, right? But in the 1990s, like in the mid 90s, people like Critical Resistance, they were telling us the fastest growing component of the prison industrial complex is immigrant detention. And they were ahead of the curve. They were already saying that, right? And now we're living in it. This is, we're living in a time where we are reaping the effects of the 1996 crime bill. I know my family was deeply affected by that, right? How this is a legacy. And so really thinking about, and I also, part of the reason why I'm so inspired by creativity, by art making, is because of the letters that I received from my father when he was in prison. For him, art was a creative expression. Art was a way for him to really have this art therapy. And so I really see art making, cultural productions. I really see, performance really being something that will allow us to make connections with other communities, and to keep doing that really important abolition work.
I wanted to just pick up where you left off, thinking about the importance of cultural organizing, because that is the reason for the birth of Radio Cachimbona in the first place. I've spent this whole webinar talking about the limitations of the law and how we can't rely on it. And the podcast is a tool for public education to have abolitionist conversations. No one becomes an abolitionist overnight. And for me, the podcast is a place to explore these ideas, make them, to normalize them, and to share them with as many folks as possible.
I was gonna say, dope, thank you. I was just gonna bring up the fact that, we are doing this visible cultural work and we're getting into the masses, like, it brings up a lot of threats also. And I know all of us are on the front lines, so I just wanted to talk a little bit about what those threats look like. So I think one of the first things as a person that's facing deportation, is really like, I can see some of the threats that not necessarily all the folks also know about. So I'll talk a little bit about the threats that are really coming in subtly, right? We have threads. We want to be able to use our, our voices, right? And we want to be able to use our freedom of speech safely on the internet to build power and connect through the social media platforms and all this cultural work. But it's really also dangerous in the moment of surveillance, right? In the moment of like that ICE and the police have all this tech to be able to hunt us and surveil us and mark us and target us. So some of the few threats right now and challenges to fighting deportation and making sure that we win this deportation is, obviously violations of First Amendment, right? We see that even undocumented people doing advocacy work are getting letters from ICE saying, oh, hey, we heard you say you were undocumented. Here's a letter, a notice to appear, basically, right? So we see that there are no protections. We see that judges and ICEs have access to their own discretion to do whatever they want, to pass us on to a detention center or not. If you see a border agent and when you're crossing this well, like they have a lot of discretion on what happens with the people they deal with. So that's a big challenge that they have there. Again, we've said it here, they're rogue. There's no one doing any oversight on these law enforcement agencies. Another challenge and threat to the legal organizing, which I'm so thankful for Yvette and the whole legal team that's not here right now, but is the barriers, to post-conviction, the barriers that the Supreme Court is also placing. Right now, I'm dealing with some post-conviction strategy, and it's really tough that when people do end up doing their time, go to jail, go to prison, do their probation or whatnot, they can possibly, if they have the access and the information, they can possibly go and figure out how to get their rights back, right? They go how to figure out how to move ahead and move past those things that have happened in the past, but immigrants don't have that. There's actually a Supreme Court case right now called the Thomas and Thompson that says that if you do vacate your charges after, time has passed, it won't matter for immigrants. It won't matter to ICE, right? The fact that they can get away with doing this, those are some of the challenges, that we're facing, that there is no defense. We heard about the 96 immigration laws through Jacinta and the video at the beginning, that there's a system of laws in place to take away due process from immigrants, take away any defense that we might have in the courts, because those courts are unjust. And one more threat that I can think about is just the white supremacists and the police that are out here in these right wings, right? All these white people, we've had white people, white supremacists create op-eds about me, y'all. I'm doing this, we are doing this much cultural work and shifting that they're literally making op-eds of me that are going viral, right? We know that the right wing has more infrastructure, right, to access and take dominant lead in the media, and that's what they're doing, So for us, those are the challenges, that I'm not safe. My case is so public, right, that I'm out there being scrutinized by the people that literally want to see my demise, want to deport me, right? So yeah, I'm wondering if you wanted to add anything else, Yvette, or anybody else around some of the threats, as we're doing this abolition work, maybe even just threats from our familias when they're like, nah, you're wild talking about abolition. We need prisons, right? Those are threats too, and but we know that we need each other.
Yeah, I have had those conversations with my family. Like I said, the ideas of police and prison are so deeply ingrained. Even for people who are fleeing really oppressive government regimes and then migrated to another really oppressive regime, it's still kind of taken for granted. But yeah, I've experienced similar threats as well, because I don't engage in respectability politics on the podcast at all. I say it like it is. And white Latinxes in particular have gotten mad that I've called them white. And one of them called my employer and tried to get me fired. It's just kind of, but at the same time, it's like, that's a sign that we're disrupting.
Right. Abolish snitches.
Honest.
So yeah, so we have some threads, but again, y'all, I think the wins really come out of these deportation campaigns, these educational campaigns, right? The wins look very different for us, right? They look like having joy and organizing and building, right? Digital culture organizing is the strategy. We're building momentum. We're building community, this energy of celebration, right? We're honoring femme bodies, queer bodies, unapologetic bodies. A lot of folks here, Castro, when I actually got to attend this last time, she was able to use our platform to also do a countdown of every day that I was out, making sure that nobody forgot, right? That was a win for us because guess what happened? After 43 days of her countdown, right, of reminding people that I'm still locked up, that people are still detained, we got to pressure the judges and to release me. That's why I'm here fighting with y'all, right? The fact that we have a national abolish ICE call and free them all call, those are the wins that we're seeing. Those are the wins, as you see on the screen here, in Adelanto, the people in California just got the judge to order ICE and GEO to release everyone by a certain amount of time, I think by the end of next month because of COVID, right? We got to make sure that they don't get forced to go back after COVID and the pandemic is over, because we're seeing that happen, right? We see wins and they take them away from us right away. So I just wanted to really just share that those wins, you know, those wins also just look like us having joy and being supported. So Castro, if you want to clip that really small clip of the folks in Austin, another Chinga la Migra episode, we wanted to just clip and how the organizers on the ground felt about what our wins look like to them. It may not be a win in deportation cases because those are ongoing, but the win again comes between the building that we're all doing, the online, the driving the online to the ground. Go ahead, fam.
We have to party. That is part of our essence. That is part of our energy. That is how we regroup. That is where the fuel and fire comes from. There's nobody better that I love to party with than my family and my gente. We need this. We need it constantly. Like there is the war going on and we need to celebrate ourselves simultaneously. Otherwise, we are doing the job for them. We are destroying ourselves for them. So equally as important as it is to go out there and fucking fight everything possible, we have to celebrate ourselves, hold ourselves, and remind ourselves that we are valid. We are vital parts of all of this.
Yes, that was the folks in community in Austin. Y'all, it was a pleasure to organize with them as well. But I just wanted to leave everybody with those moments of like joy, because we're still out here. We are not going anywhere, not anytime soon. We've been here migrating up and down. So thank you so much, y'all, for sharing and joining with me today.
Yes. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I just want to remind folks that they can support us on these different social media channels. Please make sure to go to the website, keepalefree.org. Follow us on Twitter at KAF Campaign, Instagram at Support Don't Deport. And please donate. Ale, if you want to dive a little deeper into why folks should donate at all time, make it rain, but why specifically we need everyone to donate all your cash monies.
Yay, thank you, Castro. So yeah, so right now in this moment in phase, we're fundraising for some legal fees. We are in the immigration, the Board of Immigration Appeals process. We're still turning that in. And we're also, embarking on the post-conviction strategy, which again, costs money. Nothing is free out here. These lawyers, Yvette might be doing, work in her community, but these other lawyers be charging. So we need to fundraise. The goal is 10K. So please donate in any way, reach out to the campaign. Right now, our legal team is diligently trying to figure out relief from these distorted criminal charges that are making me deportable. So, we do have some strategies and we're not gonna keep trying to build pathways of protection. So please help us by donating and again, sharing. We all know that no matter what president we have right now, we're gonna keep fighting to release people. We're gonna keep fighting for autonomy. We're going to keep organizing to free them all. Y'all, there are many team members that are not here today. These are just 4 of us. But we have Belinda in Baltimore doing website and action network work. We have Maria Alejandra in Chicago, who does a lot of deportation defense organizing. We have Raquel in the Bay that does a lot of development work and monies work for us. We have Tanya in Connecticut doing a lot of coordination and bookings. Yes, yeah, I see. Yeah, we have Juan doing local legal strategy with Yvette. Gloria, obviously here, a writer for the campaign. Misha doing some PR work. And of course, y'all here, thank you so much. Shout outs to Jacinta, mi gente, Just Future Laws. Follow them for more movement lawyering, Detention Watch Network fam, leading on Free Them All, and just the Orange County Rapid Response and Critical Resistance folks that I continually learn every day. So we want to encourage you to research, get involved with one of the organizations, with us, with whoever, if you're not already, especially under whatever presidency you might be on.